The sun was slipping low over the streets of Lagos, painting the air golden. People were rushing home, danfos honking, street hawkers shouting, traffic choking the wide road in front of Super Save supermarket. It was the kind of noisy evening where no one expected a miracle, only more chaos. And then it happened. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up on the roadside. Its engine purred like a wild cat, catching the attention of everyone nearby. Hawkers paused. A mother dragging her crying child stopped. Even the security guard at the supermarket froze mid-yawn. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man who made heads turn instantly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a custom navy blue suit that hugged him perfectly. His wristwatch gleamed like it carried the sun itself. Some recognized him immediately. Others whispered in shock. "That's Damien Cole, the billionaire investor?" The same man Forbes called Africa's Iron Banker. Damien Cole, billionaire, tech investor, the man who had built an empire across finance and real estate. Women swooned when they saw him on magazine covers. Men admired him, envied him, or wanted to be him. But tonight, Damien wasn't walking into a shareholders' meeting or stepping into a gala. He was walking toward her. On the pavement near a pile of empty crates sat a woman. Her belly was swollen with pregnancy, round beneath a faded, oversized t-shirt. Her wrapper was torn, her slippers mismatched, her hair untidy. She was young, maybe mid-20s, but the years of struggle made her look older. In her arms was a plastic bag half filled with Gary and sachet water. She sat with her back against the supermarket wall, eyes downcast, like someone who had stopped expecting life to notice her. Her name was Amara Okafor. And in that moment, she looked up to see a billionaire striding straight toward her. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Others pulled out their phones. What's Damien Cole doing with that pregnant beggar? Maybe he wants to give her money? He can't. Is this real? Amara's heart pounded as his shadow fell over her. She blinked, shielding her eyes from the evening glare. He stopped right in front of her. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the noise of the city filled the air. Then Damien's voice came low, calm, but firm. "My name is Damien Cole." Amara stared, confused. "And why are you talking to me?" He smiled faintly, but there was a storm in his eyes. "Because I've seen you here, day after day. And I've heard the way you speak to yourself, to your unborn child. You don't sound broken. You sound like someone who deserves another chance." She blinked, trembling. "Sir, I don't understand." He took a deep breath. Then he said the words that silenced an entire street. "Amara Okafor, will you marry me?" The world stopped. Phones shook in people's hands as they struggled to record. A hawker dropped his tray of gala sausages. Someone screamed. Cars slowed, horns blaring, drivers stretching their necks in disbelief. Amara's mouth fell open. What did you just say?" "You heard me," Damien replied, his jaw tight but his eyes unwavering. "I'm asking you to be my wife." A pregnant homeless woman. Proposed to by one of the richest men in Africa. The air buzzed with disbelief. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. "He's crazy." Is he mocking her? No, look, he's serious. Amara's chest rose and fell rapidly. She wasn't sure if she was dreaming or hallucinating from hunger. But then her unborn child kicked, reminding her this was painfully real. Her voice cracked. "You can't mean this. I'm nothing. Look at me. I'm carrying another man's child. I sleep on the floor of an abandoned kiosk. You." Damien knelt. Right there, in front of dozens of strangers, the billionaire in a navy suit lowered himself onto one knee before the pregnant homeless woman. Gasps exploded louder than the Lagos traffic. "Please," Damien said, his voice shaking for the first time in public memory. "Please marry me." Amara's eyes widened. She put a hand on her belly, tears pricking her lashes. The shame, the rejection, the endless nights of hunger, all of it clashed with this impossible moment. But instead of saying yes, she whispered something that made even Damien freeze. "If you truly mean it," her voice broke, "then take responsibility for this child first. Before me. Before anything else." Prove to me this baby will not be born into the same rejection I have suffered. The crowd exploded. What? She rejected him. No, she's testing him. Damien's lips parted in shock. No one had ever dared put a condition before him. But Amara's eyes did not waver. She wasn't asking for jewelry, or cars, or mansions. She was asking for dignity. For a life for her unborn child. And in that moment, Damien Cole, the man who had conquered boardrooms and broken competitors, felt his throat tighten. For the first time, a woman had asked him for something money couldn't just buy. He nodded slowly. Then that is exactly what I will do. And as Amara gasped, the city around them erupted into chaos, phones recording, voices shouting, history being written in the dust of a Lego street. This was only the beginning. The crowd around Super Save Supermarket still buzzed with disbelief. People whispered, laughed, and filmed as Damien rose slowly from his knees. His navy suit was dusted at the knees, but he didn't care. His eyes were locked on Amara. She was trembling, her hand clutched over her swollen belly. Her condition had silenced him in a way nothing else ever had. No one had ever demanded such a thing from Damien Cole, not shareholders, not politicians, not even women who longed for his attention. But this homeless pregnant woman had just drawn a line in the sand. And instead of anger, Damien felt respect. He nodded firmly. You want me to take responsibility for this child first? Done. Tonight. The murmurs deepened. Some scoffed. He's bluffing. Others sneered. A beg, he'll drive away and never come back. But before anyone could react, Damien extended his hand. Come with me. Amara froze. Her voice trembled. I can't. Look at me. I'll stain your car, embarrass you. I don't care, he said softly. Let me prove it to you. For a long moment she stared at him. Then, slowly she placed her hand in his. His grip was steady, warm, grounding. He helped her to her feet, and though her legs shook beneath her weight, Damien's arms supported her firmly. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some booing, but all recording. As Damien opened the Rolls-Royce door, Amara hesitated. She looked down at her mud-stained wrapper, her cracked feet, her swollen ankles. Tears blurred her vision. I don't belong in there, she whispered. You belong with me, Damien replied, his voice strong enough for the world to hear. Gasps followed as Amara slowly lowered herself into the leather seat, her plastic bag of Gary still clutched tightly in her hand. Damien closed the door gently, circled back to the driver's side, and slid in. As the engine purred and the car pulled into the Lagos traffic, the street outside erupted like a carnival, voices shouting, It's real. He's taking her. Inside the car, silence reigned. Amara clutched her belly, heart pounding, while Damien kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead. She kept sneaking glances at him, her mind a storm of questions. What game is this? He broke the silence. First, we're going to the hospital. You and the baby deserve care. Her lips parted. Hospital? I haven't. You don't need to explain. Tonight, you rest in a clean bed. Tomorrow, you eat food made for a queen. From now on, you'll never face rejection again. Not you, not your child. Her throat tightened. No man had ever spoken to her like that. Not even the one who had left her pregnant and broken. 20 minutes later, the Rolls-Royce stopped in front of Victoria Crest Medical Suites, a private hospital with marble pillars and spotless glass walls. Nurses and guards rushed forward as Damien stepped out, his presence like thunder in the night. He opened the door for Amara, who sat frozen in disbelief. Come, he said gently. The staff stared wide-eyed as she stepped out, wrapper torn, slippers hanging. But one sharp look from Damien silenced their judgment. She's with me. The words carried weight. Enough weight to bend reality. Within minutes, Amara was ushered into a private maternity ward, the air rich with the smell of antiseptic and lavender. A doctor hurried in, stammering as he shook Damien's hand. Sir, Mr. Cole, what an honor. Save the greetings, Damien cut him off. He gestured to Amara. She is my priority tonight. Full checkup. Mother and child. The doctor blinked but nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Amara's heart thudded as nurses began gentle examinations, checking her blood pressure, scanning her belly, listening to the baby's heartbeat. Tears pricked her eyes when she heard the steady thump-thump-thump from the machine. Her baby was strong. She looked over at Damien, who stood with his arms folded, watching intently. Their eyes met, and for the first time, she saw something in his gaze she hadn't expected. Not pity, not shame, but pride. When the doctor finally turned, he smiled. She and the baby are healthy, just malnourished. With proper diet and rest, both will thrive. Damien nodded, then looked at Amara. Did you hear that? Your child has a future. Her tears spilled freely now. Why are you doing this for me? For us. Damien walked closer, his voice low but steady. Because once, I too was left with nothing but pain. I know what it means to be invisible. And I promised myself, if I ever found someone worth saving, I wouldn't hesitate. Her lips trembled. She wanted to ask more, but exhaustion weighed her down. Nurses helped her onto a clean hospital bed, tucking fresh sheets around her. She clutched her belly, whispering to her child, "We're safe, we're finally safe." Damien stood at the doorway, watching her eyes flutter closed. His chest tightened. For years, boardrooms and billions had filled his time, but not his soul. Now, for the first time, he felt alive. And outside that ward, whispers spread like wildfire. The billionaire is serious. He really brought her here. This story is just beginning. They were right. Because that night, Damien Cole had not just saved a woman. He had changed his destiny. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Victoria Crest Medical Suites. Amara blinked awake to the soft scent of roses drifting from a vase at her bedside. For a split second, she thought it was a dream, that she'd wake up back on the cold pavement with sachet water bottles for pillows. But then she touched the crisp hospital sheets. She sat up slowly, her hand resting on her swollen belly. For the first time in months, her child kicked, strong and steady. Amara gasped and whispered, "We made it, we're really safe." The door opened. A nurse stepped in, pushing a silver tray with warm pap, akra, and fresh fruit. "Compliments of Mr. Cole," she said with a polite bow. Amara's eyes widened. "This is for me?" The nurse smiled gently. "Eat, my dear. You need your strength." As Amara sipped the pap, tears streamed down her cheeks. She wasn't used to being served, being cared for. She whispered a prayer under her breath, clutching her belly. "My child, maybe our story isn't over yet." Moments later, the door opened again. Damien entered, dressed casually in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, his Rolex glinting in the morning light. His presence filled the room, steady and calm. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Amara lowered her gaze. "Better, but I don't understand why." Damien pulled up a chair beside her bed. "Because dignity should not be a luxury. You asked me to take responsibility for your child. That begins now." Her lips trembled. She wanted to argue, to push him away, but the sincerity in his eyes held her still. "Come," he said after a moment. "There's more." Two nurses wheeled in packages wrapped in silver paper. Amara frowned as one box was placed on her lap. She opened it carefully and gasped. Inside was a flowing maternity gown of soft lavender silk, paired with a matching headscarf. Her fingers shook as she touched the fabric. This must cost." "Don't," Damien interrupted softly. "All that matters is that you feel like the woman you are, not forgotten, not rejected, but honored." Within the hour, the nurses helped Amara bathe properly for the first time in weeks. Warm water washed away the dirt, the shame, the nights spent in gutters and abandoned kiosks. When she stepped out and slipped into the gown, her reflection in the mirror startled her. Her skin glowed again, her hair brushed neatly, her swollen belly resting gently beneath the silk. For the first time in months, Amara saw not a beggar, but a woman. When Damien returned, his eyes flickered with something unspoken. He nodded slowly. "That's the woman I saw yesterday." Her cheeks flushed, but she quickly looked away. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," he said simply. "Just live." An hour later, The Rolls-Royce glided out of the hospital gates with Amara seated carefully in the back, her fingers gripping the silk gown like it might disappear. She stared out at the bustling streets of Lagos, Danfo buses crammed with passengers, hawkers tapping car windows, children running barefoot across dusty sidewalks. Only yesterday she had been one of them, invisible, unwanted, discarded. Today she sat in a car worth more than everything she had ever known. The car slowed. Amara turned, her eyes widening as golden gates loomed ahead. Beyond them stretched a driveway lined with palm trees swaying gently in the breeze. At the center of a wide courtyard, a marble fountain sparkled under the sun, its water dancing like liquid diamonds. The gates opened slowly, as though unveiling a secret kingdom. Amara gasped. This can't be real. Damien's lips curved faintly. Welcome home. The mansion rose before them, a masterpiece of glass and ivory stone, tall columns gleaming, balconies draped in flowering vines. Windows stretched wide, reflecting the Lagos sky. From the gardens came the sound of birdsong and the scent of hibiscus. The car stopped. A butler in a dark suit hurried forward, bowing. Welcome, sir. Welcome, madam. Amara froze. Madam. No one had ever called her that. Her eyes stung with tears. Damien stepped out first, then turned and extended his hand to her. She hesitated, staring at the silk pooled around her lap. Her heart pounded. This was too much. Too impossible. But Damien's voice was calm, commanding yet gentle. Amara, trust me. Step into the life you deserve. With trembling hands, she placed her palm in his and stepped out onto the marble courtyard. The sun kissed her face, and for the first time in years, she did not feel like a shadow. But as the mansion doors opened, revealing glittering chandeliers and marble floors, Amara's breath caught in her throat. Because at the top of the grand staircase stood a woman in her 50s, dressed in royal blue lace, eyes sharp as knives. Damien's mother. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Damien, who is this? And why is she in my house? Amara's heart sank. The fight for dignity had only just begun. The marble doors closed with a heavy thud behind them. Inside, chandeliers glittered like captured stars, and the floor gleamed so brightly Amara could see her own reflection in the polished stone. She clutched her belly, overwhelmed, but her awe was cut short by the piercing eyes at the top of the staircase. Damien's mother. Madame Veronica Cole descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing authority. Her royal blue lace gown swept the floor, her jewelry glittered, and her lips pressed into a thin line. When she reached the bottom, her gaze swept over Amara from head to toe, the silk maternity gown, the swollen belly, the worn sandals peeking from beneath the hem. Her nostrils flared. Damien, explain this. Damien's jaw tightened. Mother, this is Amara Okafor. Veronica's eyes narrowed. And why, pray tell, is she dressed like she belongs here? Because she does, Damien said firmly. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Amara shifted uneasily, lowering her gaze. She felt exposed, like a trespasser. Veronica stepped closer, circling Amara like a hawk. Pregnant. And not with your child. Her voice dripped disdain. Damien, are you mocking this family's name? Amara flinched as if slapped. Her hand instinctively shielded her belly. She had expected whispers, maybe judgment, but not such blunt cruelty, at least not so soon. Damien's voice was low but steady. Mother, I'm not mocking anything. I'm making a choice. Amara is under my protection. And soon under my name. Gasps rippled through the staff gathered discreetly at the corners. A maid dropped a tray of glasses with a sharp crash. Veronica's eyes widened in horror. Marriage? To her? A nobody off the street? Amara's throat tightened. Shame burned her chest. Her mind screamed to run, to escape the humiliation, but her feet were frozen. Damien moved closer, standing between his mother and Amara. You taught me, mother, that a man is measured not by wealth, but by the lives he chooses to honor. I'm honoring her. And the child she carries. Veronica's hand trembled as she pointed at Amara. That child is not yours, Damien. No, he admitted, his voice ringing like thunder through the mansion. But it will be mine. The room went silent. Amara's eyes shot to him, wide with disbelief. His words struck her deeper than any gift ever could. He wasn't just taking her in, he was claiming her child, the one everyone else had rejected. Veronica staggered back, clutching her chest as though the declaration had stolen her breath. "You're out of your mind," she whispered. Damien stepped closer to Amara and gently touched her arm. "You asked me to prove it," he murmured, just for her ears. "I just did." Her lips trembled. Tears blurred her sight. "Damien." But Veronica wasn't finished. She straightened, regaining her composure, her voice cold as ice. "If you bring this woman under this roof, Damien, then know this. The Cole family name will not shield you. The board, society, the press, they will tear you apart. And when they do, I will not stand beside you." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Amara's stomach twisted. She couldn't bear the thought of being the reason Damien lost everything. She pulled her arm from his grasp. "Maybe she's right," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Maybe I don't belong here." But Damien caught her wrist firmly. His eyes burned with resolve. "Don't you dare say that again. You belong here because I said so." The staff whispered among themselves, their faces torn between shock and curiosity. Veronica's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Very well, Damien. You've chosen. But mark my words, the world won't forgive this disgrace. And neither will I." With that, she swept out of the hall, her heels clicking against the marble until her figure disappeared into the east wing. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Amara sank into a nearby chair, trembling, her hands cradling her belly. Her tears fell freely. I told you I don't belong." Damien crouched in front of her, lifting her chin until her eyes met his. His voice softened, steady as a promise. "You belong more than anyone I've ever known. You're not a disgrace. You're my choice. And soon, the world will understand why." For the first time, Amara believed he wasn't just trying to save her. He was fighting for her. And that was a battle neither of them could afford to lose. The guest room was bigger than any house Amara had ever entered in her life. The walls shimmered with cream paint, adorned with gold-framed art. Silk curtains flowed with the evening breeze, and the king-sized bed looked like something carved for royalty. Amara sat on the edge, frozen, afraid to even wrinkle the spotless sheets. She clutched her belly, her unborn child turning within her as if sensing her fear. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This can't be real." A knock sounded at the door. Her head snapped up. "Yes." The door opened gently. Damien stood there, holding a silver tray himself. "Not a maid, not a butler." "I thought you might like this," he said quietly. On the tray was a steaming bowl of jollof rice with fried plantain and grilled fish. The smell filled the room, warm and rich. Amara blinked, tears stinging her eyes. "You brought this yourself?" Damien smiled faintly. "I don't believe in giving orders for the things that matter." He set the tray down on the bedside table. Amara hesitated, then took a bite. The taste was heavenly, nothing like the cold scraps she had scavenged for months. Her hand shook around the spoon. Damien pulled a chair closer, sitting across from her. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Only the sound of Amara's cautious chewing and the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Finally, she spoke. "Why me, Damien? Why stop on that street? Why not any other woman in this city, any woman without baggage, without shame?" Damien leaned back, exhaling slowly. His eyes drifted, not at her, but somewhere far away. "Because I saw myself." Amara frowned. "Yourself?" He nodded. His voice was low, steady but edged with pain. "Do you know why I built this empire, Amara? Why I spent nights in boardrooms, why I kept chasing deal after deal, never resting?" She shook her head softly. "Because once, I was a man who had everything, and then I lost it all." Amara's spoon stilled. "My wife," Damien said, his jaw tightened. "She was carrying our first child. We were planning a future, nursery colors, names, family vacations. One night, there was a fire in our home. I wasn't there. I was stuck in a meeting that seemed more important at the time. By the time I got the call, it was too late. Both of them, gone. Amara's breath caught. Her own chest ached as though she had been the one burned by those flames. I buried them, and with them I buried myself. After that, I stopped believing in anything but money. I told myself, if I became untouchable, maybe the pain would stop. But it didn't. All the billions, the houses, the jets, it was just noise. Until I saw you. Amara's lips parted, her hand tightening over her belly. Me? But I'm nothing like her. You're exactly like her, Damien whispered. Not in looks, not in voice. But in the way you spoke to your child while sitting on that pavement. You believed that baby deserved better, even when the world gave you nothing. That was her too. Hope in the middle of ruins. Amara's tears spilled freely. 4 months, she had been invisible, discarded by the man who made her pregnant, by family who called her a disgrace. Yet here sat Damien Cole, billionaire, opening scars no one else had seen, comparing her to the only woman he had ever loved. She put her spoon down, her hands trembling. I don't know if I can be what you think I am. Damien leaned forward, his gaze steady. You don't have to be anything but yourself. You already are enough. Silence filled the room again, heavy but not empty. Amara's child kicked beneath her palm, as if responding to his words. For the first time in months, Amara didn't feel broken. She felt seen. That night, as Damien left her to rest, Amara lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The sheets smelled of lavender. The pillow was soft. She whispered to her unborn child, maybe, just maybe, our story is changing. And somewhere down the hall, Damien stood at his own window, staring out at the city lights, whispering into the night, maybe my story is changing too. Neither knew how much more pain and beauty awaited them. But for the first time, they both dared to dream again. Morning sunlight bathed the Cole mansion in gold. Amara sat at the long dining table, her lavender gown replaced with a soft ivory maternity dress Damien had chosen. Before her sat a spread she couldn't have imagined even in dreams: golden brown ajij bread, scrambled eggs, pap steaming in porcelain bowls, sliced fruits arranged like artwork. She ate slowly, self-conscious. Every maid and guard seemed to steal glances at her. She felt like an intruder seated on a throne that didn't belong to her. Damien, already dressed in a gray suit, watched her quietly from the head of the table. When her hand trembled on the fork, he said calmly, "Eat, Amara. You're not a guest. You're home." She swallowed hard, then forced herself to take another bite. The words home lingered in her chest, heavy and unbelievable. Halfway through breakfast, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked back at her. "You'll come with me today." Amara froze. "Where?" "Cole Capital headquarters." His tone left no room for doubt. Her spoon clattered onto the plate. "Damien, no. People will laugh." "Let them laugh," he interrupted firmly. "They laughed yesterday when I knelt before you. Did it change my decision?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Hours later, the Rolls-Royce pulled up before a towering skyscraper of glass and steel in Victoria Island. The sign gleamed, Cole Capital Investments. As Damien stepped out, staff and security rushed to greet him. Cameras flashed. Paparazzi had been waiting as always. But today, they froze when they saw Amara step out behind him, her pregnant belly obvious beneath her flowing gown. Gasps rippled. "Who is she? Is that the woman from yesterday's video? No, it can't be." But it was. The viral clips had already spread across Lagos overnight. Damien Cole kneeling before a pregnant homeless woman. People argued in salons, offices, Danfo buses. Was it a publicity stunt? Was it madness? Or was it the most romantic thing anyone had ever seen? Now, the proof walked beside him in daylight. Amara felt the weight of every eye like daggers on her skin. Whispers buzzed like angry bees. She lowered her head, wishing the marble tiles would swallow her whole. Damien's hand brushed hers lightly. She flinched, but he caught her fingers firmly. In full view of flashing cameras, he laced his hand through hers. The crowd gasped louder. Damien Cole holding her hand. He's serious about her. Amara's knees wobbled, but Damien's steady grip carried her forward. Inside the building, sleek hallways gleamed with chrome and glass. Staff members stared openly, their polite greetings laced with curiosity. Some bowed respectfully, others snickered behind clipped smiles. They entered the top floor, the executive boardroom. Inside, 12 board members sat around a long table, their suits sharp, their eyes sharper. When Damien entered, they rose slightly in respect. But when Amara followed, their jaws tightened. One elderly man cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, we weren't expecting." "You weren't expecting me to keep my word," Damien cut in smoothly. "Gentlemen, meet Amara Okafor. The woman I intend to marry. And the one whose child I will raise as mine." The words dropped like a bomb. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. One whispered too loudly, "Pregnant, and not his." Another tried to cover his shock with a cough. Amara wanted to sink into the ground. Her hands trembled so badly she almost pulled free, but Damien's grip tightened reassuringly. "Sir," another board member began carefully, "with all due respect, this relationship could affect the company's reputation. Investors trust me because I make bold decisions," Damien interrupted sharply. His eyes swept the room. "This is no different. This woman is not a scandal. She is a testimony. And if anyone here believes otherwise, you're free to resign today." The room went silent. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. None dared speak again. Damien guided Amara to a chair at the table. For the first time in her life, she sat in a room where billionaire decisions were made. Her hands clutched her belly as she whispered to herself, "God, what is happening to me?" Hours later, as they left the building, the paparazzi were still waiting. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. "Mr. Cole, is it true you proposed to a homeless pregnant woman?" "Amara, how does it feel to go from the streets to a billionaire's mansion overnight? Is this charity or love?" Damien ignored them, guiding her into the car. But just before the door closed, he turned, his voice loud and clear. "Her name is Amara. Learn it. Because very soon, it will be Amara Cole." The crowd erupted. Shouts, cheers, insults, applause. The city was on fire with the story. Inside the car, Amara buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed. "Damien, they hate me. They'll never accept me." He turned, his voice steady. "Let them hate. They don't need to accept you. I do. And I already have." Her tears fell silently. For the first time, she wasn't crying from shame, but from the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, he truly meant it. But deep inside she knew, the world wasn't finished testing them. The city never stopped whispering. Every newspaper headline, every blog post, every late-night TV show carried the same story. Damien Cole loses his mind? Billionaire proposes to pregnant street beggar. Some mocked him. Others accused Amara of being a gold digger. Many doubted it would last more than a week. But inside the mansion, another reality unfolded. Amara's pregnancy was entering its final months. Nights became harder. Some evenings she woke breathless, clutching her belly as waves of pain rolled through her body. Other nights, she sat on the balcony, tears in her eyes, whispering prayers to a child not yet born. Damien never left her side. One evening, as Lagos rain poured outside, Amara doubled over on the bed, groaning. "It hurts. Damien, it hurts so much." He rushed to her, panic flashing across his usually calm face. "Talk to me, Amara. What's wrong?" She gripped his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "I can't breathe properly. I think something's wrong with the baby." Without hesitation, Damien scooped her into his arms. The mansion erupted with motion. Staff running, drivers pulling out the car, bodyguards shouting into radios. Within minutes, the Rolls-Royce sped through the storm, sirens clearing the road ahead. Inside the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed. Damien refused to wait outside. "I'm not leaving her," he growled. They tried to protest, but one look at his face silenced them. He stayed at Amara's side, holding her hand as monitors beeped and doctors checked her heartbeat, her blood pressure, the baby's movements. Sweat streamed down her face, her gown clinging to her skin. At one point she turned to him, whispering through tears, "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything, you don't owe this child anything." Damien's grip tightened. His voice was low but fierce. "Don't you ever say that again. I owe you everything. You gave me back a reason to breathe. And this child is mine, Amara. Maybe not by blood but by choice. And choice is stronger than blood." Her tears fell harder. For months, she had prayed someone would claim her child, not as a burden, but as a blessing. Now here was a man the world called untouchable, whispering promises even her own family had refused to make. Hours passed. Finally, the lead doctor sighed in relief. "Mother and child are fine. Just contractions from stress. She needs rest and proper nutrition." Damien exhaled deeply, his forehead dropping against Amara's hand. She stroked his hair weakly, whispering, "Thank you." He looked up, his eyes glassy. "Don't thank me. Just don't scare me like that again." That night, back at the mansion, Amara couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the rain ease into a soft drizzle. Damien walked in quietly, carrying 2 glasses of warm milk. He handed one to her, then sat across, his shirt sleeves rolled, his face tired but still handsome in the dim light. "Why me?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. "Out of all the women in Lagos, why did you choose me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said simply, "Because you're the only one who asked me for something I couldn't buy." Her lips parted. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "You didn't want cars. Or diamonds. Or mansions. You wanted dignity. A future for your child. That told me everything about the woman you are. And I knew. I couldn't let you go." Amara's chest ached with emotions too heavy to name. For the first time, she felt something stirring that terrified her. Hope. Her baby kicked just then, strong and steady. Damien's eyes softened. Without asking, he reached forward, his palm resting gently on her belly. The movement made Amara freeze. No man had ever touched her pregnancy with such tenderness. His eyes locked with hers, and in the quiet of the night, something shifted between them. For the first time, it wasn't just pity or protection. It was connection. She whispered, voice trembling, "He knows you're here." Damien smiled faintly. "Then let him know. I'm never leaving." And in that moment, with the rain fading and the baby kicking between them, Amara realized, this was no longer just survival. Something deeper was beginning. The mansion was silent that night until a scream shattered the air. "Damien!" Amara's cry echoed down the marble hallways. Damien burst into her room, still in his shirt sleeves, his face pale. Amara was hunched over, clutching her belly, sweat pouring down her face. "It's time," she gasped. In an instant, the house turned into chaos. Nurses rushed in, bodyguards cleared the driveway, the Rolls-Royce screeched into life. Damien carried her himself, his arms strong but trembling, whispering, "Hold on, Amara. Hold on." At Victoria Crest Medical Suites, the delivery room lights burned bright. Doctors shouted instructions, nurses moved swiftly, and Amara screamed as contractions racked her body. She gripped Damien's hand so tightly her nails dug into his skin, but he didn't flinch. He stayed beside her, whispering again and again, "I'm here. You're not alone. I promised you." Hours stretched like eternity. Sweat, pain, tears. And then, the cry. A sharp, piercing newborn cry filled the room. Amara collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing with exhaustion as the nurse held up a tiny, squirming infant. Damien's chest tightened. He had heard boardroom applause, investor cheers, even the roar of jets at his private airstrip. But nothing had ever sounded as powerful, as holy, as this baby's cry. The nurse smiled. "A baby boy. Healthy." Amara reached weakly, tears streaking her face. "My baby." Damien took the child carefully from the nurse, his large hands trembling. The baby's tiny fists flailed, his cries fierce. Damien stared down at him, his throat tightening. "You're perfect," he whispered. "Perfect." Then, without hesitation, he turned to the room full of stunned doctors, nurses, and staff. His voice rang with steel. "This child is mine. Gasps erupted. A nurse nearly dropped her clipboard. The doctor stammered, "But, sir?" "No buts," Damien thundered. His eyes blazed as he lifted the baby higher. "From this moment he carries my name. He is Cole. My son." The weight of his declaration hung heavy. Staff exchanged glances, their shock palpable. A billionaire claiming another man's child? It was unheard of. But Amara, tears flooding her eyes, knew what it meant. Damien had fulfilled her test. He had chosen not just her, but her child, fully, publicly, irrevocably. When the baby was placed gently into her arms, Amara sobbed harder, her heart breaking and mending all at once. She whispered to the tiny face, "You're not alone, my child. You'll never be alone again." Hours later, as dawn painted the Lagos skyline, Damien and Amara stood together at the hospital's private balcony. Amara cradled the sleeping newborn, her gown loose around her frail body. Damien stood close, his arm around her shoulders, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "They'll talk," Amara whispered. "They'll mock. They'll never understand." "Let them," Damien said softly. He looked down at the baby, then back at her. "The world will call him unwanted. I'll call him chosen. They'll call him a mistake. I'll call him my son. And one day, they'll call him a miracle." Amara's lips trembled. She turned her face into his chest, overwhelmed. For the first time since she had been abandoned on the streets, she felt whole. News broke before noon. Damien Cole welcomes baby boy with pregnant fiancée, claims child as his own. It went viral instantly. Photos of Damien cradling the infant spread across blogs, social media, and international outlets. Some headlines mocked him. Others hailed him as a man of courage. Talk shows buzzed, analysts debated, pastors preached sermons about grace and second chances. But inside the hospital suite, none of that mattered. All that mattered was Amara, Damien, and the tiny life sleeping peacefully between them. And as Damien watched Amara kiss their son's forehead, he whispered a vow to himself, unheard by anyone else. "From this day, nothing will break us." By the time Amara and the baby were discharged from the hospital, Lagos was already on fire with the story. Every newspaper, every blog, every late-night gossip show had one headline: "Billionaire Damien Cole claims another man's child." Some called it madness. Others, charity. A few dared to call it love. But no matter how people spun it, everyone had an opinion. When the Rolls-Royce rolled slowly back through Victoria Island with tinted windows hiding the newborn inside, photographers swarmed like bees. Flashbulbs cracked against the glass. Voices screamed questions. "Amara, do you feel worthy of him? Damien, what about the baby's real father? Is this a publicity stunt?" Amara curled protectively around her son, her heart racing. She whispered, "Damien, they'll tear us apart. They'll never accept me." But Damien's arms slid firmly around her shoulders. "They don't need to accept you. I do. And I already have." Back at the mansion, Damien insisted on something no one expected: a press conference. "Are you sure?" Amara asked nervously, clutching the baby. "They'll humiliate you." Damien straightened his suit, his eyes like steel. "No, Amara. They'll humiliate themselves." The next day, the mansion gates opened to a sea of reporters. Cameras, microphones, flashing lights, the whole of Lagos media gathered, desperate for a glimpse of the woman and child who had stolen the billionaire's heart. When Damien stepped out onto the marble steps, Amara was beside him, the baby swaddled in her arms. Gasps rippled instantly. The sight of her, still fragile from childbirth, dressed simply in a soft blue gown, silenced even the loudest critics for a moment. Damien raised a hand for quiet. His voice rang clear and strong. 3 days ago, the world saw me kneel before Amara Okafor. Yesterday, you heard that she gave birth to a son. Today, I am here to confirm what I said then, and what I will repeat until my last breath. Amara is the woman I love. And this child," he glanced down, his face softening, "is my son." Shouts erupted. A reporter yelled, "But he isn't your blood." Damien's eyes sharpened. "No, he is my choice. And I will tell you what is stronger than blood: Commitment. Anyone can father a child. It takes a man to choose one. The crowd murmured, stunned. Another voice shouted, Mr. Cole, are you not afraid this will ruin your reputation? Damien smiled faintly. If choosing love ruins me, then I was never worth the reputation in the first place. The crowd buzzed louder now. Some reporters clapped despite themselves. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But one headline was born that day, spreading faster than the rest. Damien Cole, the billionaire who chose love over blood. Inside, Amara sat trembling, rocking her newborn. Tears blurred her sight. She whispered, Why are you risking everything for me? Damien entered the room quietly. He sat beside her, placing a hand over hers. Because for years I risked nothing. I hid behind my money, my power, my reputation. And it left me empty. But you gave me something to fight for again. Amara's throat tightened. Damien. He leaned closer, his hand gently brushing her cheek. His voice dropped low, only for her. You're not my mistake, Amar. You're my miracle. She broke, sobbing into his chest as the baby stirred softly between them. That night, the city was still talking. Social media was a war zone, half mocking, half praising. Memes flooded WhatsApp groups, gossip shows dissected every word. But inside the Cole mansion, none of it mattered. Amara sat on the balcony, her baby asleep in a cradle beside her, while Damien poured 2 glasses of wine. For the first time since stepping off the streets, she didn't feel like an intruder. She felt like she belonged. As Damien handed her a glass, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Not pity, not duty, but the first sparks of real love. And deep in her heart, Amara whispered, maybe this isn't just his fight anymore. Maybe it's ours. Days turned into weeks, and the storm refused to die. Talk shows replayed Damien's press conference. Newspapers debated whether he was a fool or a hero. Some called Amara a cunning woman who had trapped a billionaire with her pregnancy. Others, surprisingly, began calling her the woman who melted iron. But inside the mansion, life was quietly changing. The staff who once whispered behind her back now treated Amara with new respect. They saw how Damien rose in the middle of the night to rock the baby so she could sleep. They saw how he ignored society's jabs, laughing with Amara over breakfast as if the outside world didn't exist. They saw the way he gazed at her, not like a savior looking at a burden, but like a man seeing his equal. One morning, as Amara walked through the garden with her baby, the head maid approached, her voice soft. Madam, may I hold him? Amara hesitated, then nodded. The maid's eyes lit up as she cradled the baby gently, whispering blessings over him. For the first time, Amara felt the weight of suspicion lift just a little. At night, Damien began bringing Amara into his world of business. He spread documents across the study table, explaining deals, stocks, and investments in simple words. Amara listened intently, asking questions that startled him with their sharpness. You understand this? He asked once, surprised. She shrugged. I may have been homeless, Damien, but I wasn't stupid. Before my life collapsed, I studied accounting at the University of Benin. I never graduated, but numbers, they've always spoken to me. Damien leaned back, stunned. All this time, and you thought you were nothing. Her voice broke. Because that's what everyone told me. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Then let me be the first to tell you the truth, you are more than enough. The words wrapped around her like armor, silencing years of shame. Slowly, the outside world began to notice. Bloggers who once mocked her started writing softer headlines. Amara Cole, from streets to strength? Billionaire's pregnant beggar wife. Or rising star. At a charity gala, Damien stunned guests by arriving not with a model or an actress, but with Amara, dressed in a simple emerald gown that hugged her curves modestly. The whispers were merciless at first, but when she spoke passionately about creating opportunities for women abandoned by society, the room went silent. One journalist whispered to another, she actually makes sense. And just like that, the tide began to turn. But as respect grew, so did jealousy. Hidden in the shadows, There were those who couldn't accept this transformation. One of them was Damien's fiercest business rival, Chief Leonard Oba, a man who had spent years waiting for a weakness to exploit. Watching Damien's empire bend toward Amara, Chief Oba smiled coldly. "So this is his flaw," he muttered. "A woman and a child that aren't his. Let's see how long his empire survives when I turn the world against them." Meanwhile, in the mansion, Amara sat on the balcony with Damien, the baby asleep between them. The Lagos skyline glittered, 1,000 stars reflected in the glass towers. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Choosing me?" Damien turned, his gaze steady, his voice quiet but unshakable. "Every regret in my life ended the day I met you." Amara's heart thudded. She wanted to believe him, truly believe him, but a shadow of fear lingered. Because deep down, she knew love wasn't their only battle. The world wasn't done with them yet. It started with whispers. Anonymous blogs posting headlines. Damien Cole's so-called queen was once a streetwalker. Baby Cole, who is the real father? From gutter to gold digger, the true story of Amara Okafor. At first, Damien dismissed them. "Noise?" he said. "People will talk. Let them choke on their words." But the noise grew louder. A video surfaced, grainy footage of Amara begging for coins outside a market months earlier, belly already showing. The captions twisted it cruelly. "This is the woman who fooled a billionaire." When Amara saw it, she broke. Sitting in the nursery, rocking her baby, she sobbed silently. "Damien, they'll never let me escape my past." Damien crouched in front of her, gripping her hands. "Your past does not define you. If they want to fight, they'll fight me, not you." But even Damien couldn't control what came next. One evening, as the Cole Capital Board gathered, Chief Leonard Oba entered uninvited. The rival billionaire leaned on his cane, smirking. "Forgive my intrusion, gentlemen. But I believe you all should know who is influencing your chairman's decisions these days." He held up a folder, sliding photos across the glossy boardroom table. Pictures of Amara sleeping under a bridge, heavily pregnant, clutching a torn bag. The board members stiffened. Whispers rippled. "This is the woman Damien wants to place beside him as his wife? The face of Cole Capital?" Chief Oba sneered. "A beggar. A disgrace. And her child? Tell me, do you honestly believe it carries Damien's blood?" Damien's fist slammed the table. "Enough." But the damage was done. Eyes avoided his. Doubt had been planted. News spread like wildfire. Shareholders panicked. Stock prices trembled. Damien's empire began to feel the weight of scandal. That night, Amara stood on the balcony, staring at the Lagos lights through tears. "Damien, maybe your mother was right. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I'm dragging you down." He turned her firmly to face him. "Don't you dare say that again. You are not my weakness, Amara. You are my strength. Without you, I am just money. With you, I am a man." She sobbed against his chest, but deep down, fear gnawed at her. What if love wasn't enough to hold back the storm? The next morning, tabloids doubled down. Reporters gathered outside the mansion gates, shouting accusations. Protesters held signs, "Not fit to be Cole's wife." Damien called an emergency press conference. Amara begged him not to. "They'll twist your words. They'll hurt you." "They can try," he said, fire in his eyes. As he stepped onto the marble steps, cameras flashing like lightning, Amara watched from behind the curtains, her baby in her arms. The crowd shouted, "Who is she, Damien? A beggar? A liar? A trap?" Damien raised his voice above the chaos. "Her name is Amara Okafor. She is not a beggar, she is not a disgrace. She is the woman who taught me that dignity is stronger than pride, and love stronger than blood. If anyone here doubts her worth, then doubt mine, because I stand with her, till my last breath." The reporters erupted. Some cheered. Others jeered. But the speech spread across the world that night. Yet, far away, Chief Oba watched the broadcast on his phone, smirking. "Stand with her, Damien. Let's see how long you can stand when I take everything from you." And in that moment, the battle shifted. This was no longer just about love. It was war. The storm did not ease. It grew fiercer. Every morning, headlines screamed fresh poison. Coal empire in crisis. Investors withdraw over beggar wife. Amara Okafor, Lagos greatest scam? Damian Cole blinded by lust, loses grip on empire. Share prices plummeted. Longtime allies withdrew their contracts. Damian's board members whispered about replacing him. At home, staff who once bowed respectfully began to avoid Amara's gaze. She could feel their doubt like a weight on her chest. And then the final blow came. Damian's mother, Madame Veronica, returned from Europe, storming into the mansion with fire in her eyes. She stood in the living room, flanked by journalists she had deliberately tipped off. Cameras rolled as she pointed at Amara, who was rocking her baby in the corner. "This woman is not welcome in my family," Veronica declared. "She is nothing but a stain on the Cole name. And that child," she spat the word, "is not my blood." The words cut like knives. Amara's face drained of color. Tears burned her eyes as the baby whimpered in her arms. Damian stood instantly, his voice thundering. "One more word and you'll regret it." But the damage was done. By evening, the footage had gone viral. The world watched as Damian's own mother disowned Amara publicly. That night, Amara broke. She sat alone in the nursery, staring at her son as tears streamed down her face. "What have I done to you?" she whispered. "I thought I was saving you, but maybe I've doomed you." Damian found her there, her face buried in her hands. "Amara." She shook her head violently. "No, Damian. I can't do this. I can't be the reason you lose everything you've built. Look at the world. They hate me. They hate our son. Even your own mother spits on us. This isn't love, Damian, this is war. And I am your weakest soldier." Her voice cracked into sobs. Maybe I should leave." The words shattered him. For a moment, Damian couldn't breathe. The thought of waking up without her, of returning to his cold, empty life before her, was unbearable. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. His voice trembled, but it burned with fire. "You think you're my weakness? Amara, you're my only strength. When the world turned its back, you stood. When shame tried to bury you, you carried life inside you and refused to give up. That's not weakness. That's power. You're the strongest person I've ever known." Her lips trembled. "But your empire—" "Let it fall," he cut her off. His jaw clenched. "If I lose coal capital but keep you, I still win. Because empires can be rebuilt. But a woman like you comes once in a lifetime." Amara's tears fell harder, but now they were mixed with something else, disbelief melting into hope. For a long moment, they clung to each other, the baby stirring softly between them. Yet even as Damian held her, a storm still brewed outside. Chief Oba moved in the shadows, tightening his grip on contracts and investors, smiling as coal capital bled. And the city whispered louder, "This love will not last." But deep in the mansion, Damian whispered something else into Amara's ear. "Let them come. Let them try. As long as I have you, they will never break me." The morning after Amara's breakdown, Damian sat in his study, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass. His empire was bleeding, his family divided, and the woman he loved doubted her place by his side. But Damian Cole had not built an empire by folding under pressure. He called his most trusted aide. "Bring me everything on Chief Leonard Oba. Every deal, every hidden file, every unpaid bribe. Today we end this." By evening, Damian's legal team had gathered boxes of documents, recordings, and photographs. Oba's empire wasn't made of steel, it was made of lies. Tax evasion, illegal land grabs, offshore accounts hidden behind shell companies. Damian stared at the evidence, his jaw tightening. "This isn't about business anymore," he murmured. "It's about justice." The next day, Damian shocked the nation. Instead of hiding, he announced a press conference, not at the mansion, but at Coal Capital Tower, the heart of his empire. Amara panicked when she heard. "Damian, please, you've already risked enough." He took her hands gently. "No, Amara. This time, you'll stand with me. You once asked me to claim your child. Today, I'm asking you to claim your place. Beside me. Publicly. Her lips trembled. I'm scared. He cupped her face softly. But courage isn't the absence of fear, it's standing anyway. And so, for the first time, Amara agreed. When they stepped onto the stage together, the crowd erupted. Flashbulbs exploded. Critics sharpened their knives. Supporters held their breath. Amara, in a simple navy gown with her baby in her arms, looked fragile yet unshakable. Damien raised his voice. The world has called Amara unworthy. They've mocked her past, questioned her child, and tried to shame her name. But today I will show you the real fraud. He slammed a thick folder onto the podium. Screens lit up behind him, displaying documents and bank transfers. Damien's voice cut through the noise. Chief Leonard Oba, the same man who dares to call my wife a disgrace, has stolen billions from the people of Nigeria. Here are the files. Here are the names. Here are the accounts. The crowd gasped as evidence flashed on the screens. Reporters scrambled, cameras zoomed, whispers turned to shouts. This is the man you trust? This is the man who tried to bury a woman because she once slept on the streets? He is the beggar, not her, a beggar of power, feeding on corruption. The room shook with chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Some clapped. Others gaped in disbelief. Amara clutched her baby, her knees trembling, but for the first time she didn't feel like hiding. She stepped forward, her voice soft but steady into the microphone. I was abandoned. Pregnant. Hungry. The world called me trash. But one man knelt before me not because I was rich or powerful, but because he saw dignity where others saw shame. That man is Damien Cole. And this child, she lifted her baby slightly, is not a mistake. He's a miracle. The second chance. If you cannot see that, then you are the blind ones, not us. The crowd roared. For the first time, Amara was not just Damien's rescued queen. She was his equal, his voice, his shield. That night, news channels flipped. Instead of mocking headlines, they ran new ones. Cole strikes back, exposes rivals' fraud. Amara speaks, from streets to strength. Who is the real beggar? Oba or Amara? Chief Oba, cornered, tried to fight back. But by the week's end, government officials had frozen his accounts. Investigations spread. His empire crumbled. And through it all, Damien and Amara stood side by side, the baby in their arms, not just surviving the storm, but owning it. For the first time, the city whispered not in mockery, but in awe. Maybe this wasn't a scandal. Maybe this was love. Weeks passed, and the storm that once threatened to bury them slowly began to fade. Chief Oba's empire crumbled under the weight of Damien's exposé. His name was dragged through courts and newspapers. And Amara? She was no longer called beggar. Magazines now wrote headlines like, Amara Cole, the woman who faced the world and won. From abandoned pregnant woman to billionaire's queen. Damien's mother, Madame Veronica, fought the truth for as long as she could. But one evening she walked quietly into the nursery where Amara was rocking the baby. Her voice trembled. I was wrong, she whispered. Amara froze, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Veronica's eyes softened as she touched the baby's tiny hand. I thought you were a shame to this family. I see you were its salvation. Forgive me. Tears filled Amara's eyes. She nodded, whispering, we both just wanted to protect him. Now we can do it together. And so, the day came when the world witnessed something they had all doubted, Damien and Amara's wedding. It was not just a ceremony, it was a spectacle. The cathedral was draped in ivory lace and roses. Guests came from across Africa and beyond. Investors, leaders, celebrities, even those who had once mocked now came dressed in admiration. When Amara walked down the aisle, her baby cradled by Damien's mother, the entire room stood in awe. She was radiant, her gown simple yet elegant, her face glowing not just with beauty, but with dignity hard-earned. At the altar, Damien's voice broke as he spoke his vows. I once thought wealth was power, but true power was kneeling before you that day on the street. Today, I rise again not as a billionaire, but as your husband. And this time, I will never kneel for pride again, only for love. Tears streamed down Amara's cheeks as she whispered, "I was thrown away, rejected, forgotten. But you called me chosen. And today I stand not in shame, but in grace because of you." The crowd erupted in applause as they sealed their vows with a kiss. The following months, their marriage became more than a union. It became a movement. Damien and Amara launched the Okafor Foundation, named after both of their families. Its mission: to provide shelter, education, and opportunities for abandoned women and children across Nigeria. At the opening ceremony, Amara stood before a crowd of young mothers, orphans, and widows. Her voice was steady, her baby in her arms. "Once I was told I was nothing. But today, I stand as proof that your story isn't over. If love and dignity found me on the pavement, it can find you too. You are not forgotten. You are not useless. You are the future." The hall erupted in cheers, some women weeping, others raising their babies high in hope. Damien stepped forward, his hand clasping hers. "We built this not as charity, but as justice. This foundation is not a gift. It is a reminder, second chances are real." Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously, but for the first time, no one mocked. Instead, the world leaned in, inspired. And that night, as Amara tucked her baby into the crib, she whispered, "You were the beginning of all this. You were the miracle." Damien wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissing her cheek softly. "No, Amara. You were." Years passed. Seasons changed. The Cole mansion, once filled with whispers of scandal, now echoed with laughter, footsteps, and music. Amara and Damien's son, David Cole, grew into a bright, confident young man. At 15, he stood tall, already showing signs of his father's sharp mind and his mother's compassionate heart. At school, when children mocked others, he was the first to stand in their defense. His teachers said he was born to lead. The Okafor Foundation grew too. What began as a single center in Lagos spread across Nigeria, then Africa. Shelters for women, schools for children, vocational programs for the forgotten. Amara became its heartbeat, giving speeches, visiting centers, hugging women who reminded her of herself on that lonely street corner years ago. Damien became its engine, funding, expanding, ensuring no one could ever erase its impact. And the world noticed. They were invited to conferences, honored with awards, written about in books. A documentary called "The Woman the World Rejected" went viral globally, telling Amara's story from the pavement to the palace. But even with the spotlight, they remained grounded. Every evening, Damien still walked Amara through the garden. Every night, she still whispered prayers over him and their son. One evening, decades later, Amara sat on the same balcony where she had once cried, clutching her belly, believing she was a disgrace. But now, her hair streaked silver, her skin lined with wisdom, she sat with Damien at her side, their fingers interlocked. Below them, David, now a man, stood with his wife, cradling their newborn daughter. Damien's voice was soft, trembling with age. "Do you remember that night, Amara? When I knelt before you and the world laughed?" She smiled, tears glistening. "How could I forget? I thought you were insane." He chuckled weakly. "Maybe I was. But it was the only kind of madness that ever saved me." Their granddaughter let out a small cry. Amara's eyes filled as she whispered, "She will never know the shame we carried. She will only know the love we built." Damien squeezed her hand. "Because you were never my shame, Amara. You were my salvation." The little girl toddled toward them, her tiny feet pattering on the marble. She clutched a crayon drawing in her small hands. She held it up proudly, a picture of a man kneeling before a woman with a big round belly. Amara gasped softly. "Damien, that's us." At the bottom of the drawing, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Love begins where shame ends." Tears rolled freely down Amara's cheeks as she hugged her granddaughter tightly. Damien's eyes glistened too, his voice barely above a whisper. "And that, Amara, will be our story forever." The camera of life zoomed out, the mansion glowing at sunset, laughter rising, a family reborn from ashes, and a legacy standing taller than empires. Not a story of scandal. Not a story of pity, but a story of love that began where shame ended.